Chapter 40. The Web Tightens. Rand sat at a table with Logain and Moraine, both watching him intently, yet oblivious to each other. The walls of the room faded away and Rand found himself alone, before Baalzaman appeared at the table. Rand's heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his head. He jerked awake, then sat up groaning and clutching his head. He was laying on grass and his hand came away covered in blood. He tried to stand, but sat back down quickly as the world began to spin, and his back hit a tree. He recalled hearing a girl's voice as he looked around, finding he was in a lush green park with flowering bushes. A girl climbed down from the tree he leant against, wearing rich velvets and a silver circlet in her red gold curls. Her finery surpassed that of Moraine and the dark friends in the stable. She seemed completely composed and unconcerned about finding a stranger where he didn't belong, and Rand worried she would call the palace guards. She was 2 to 3 years younger than Rand, with big blue eyes, and was easily among the most beautiful women he'd ever seen, then felt a pang of guilt as he remembered Egwene. Rustling above alerted Rand to a boy his own age, who dropped down from the tree agilely. He was dressed as finely as the girl and looked so like her with the same red gold hair that Rand thought that they must be kin. He fingered his dagger as he watched Rand, yet didn't seem to feel threatened. The boy said, "We will never hear the end of this if Mother finds out, Elaine. We were meant to stay in our rooms, but you just had to get a look at Logain." "Be quiet, Gawain," the girl replied, in a tone that assumed obedience, despite being the younger of the pair. Then she asked Rand if he was all right. Rand tried to struggle to his feet, as he told her he was fine, but his legs gave way and he dropped back down. He insisted he would just climb back over the wall, but he felt so dizzy that her hand on his shoulder easily held him down. Elaine checked his head and told him he'd hit it on the way down. He was a skilled climber, but not so much at falling. Rand protested that she'll get blood on her, but she told him to be quiet as she began to empty her pockets of bandages and salves. She was almost as well supplied as a wisdom. She ordered Gawain to pass his water flask, then set to cleaning Rand's head wound and coated it in a salve, which soothed as well as Nynaeve's herbs ever had. Gawain smiled in a way that he expected Rand to bolt at any moment and he'd be calmed. He told Rand that he was Elaine's first human patient. She's always finding stray, injured animals to heal, then quickly apologized. He wasn't implying Rand was an animal. He reassured him that Elaine knew what she was doing. She's had the best teachers. Elaine pulled out a silk scarf of blue and gold, which any woman back home would treat as a treasured feast day item. She used it to hold the bandage on his head in place, ignoring Rand's protest that she shouldn't use something so fine to do it. Rand asked Gawain if she expects everyone to obey her, surprising the boy, who told Rand that yes, she does, and most people do. She applied the ointment to the scrapes on his hands as Gawain further explained. "Most people do exactly as she says. Not Mother, of course, or Elida, and not Linny, her nurse, or Gareth." Elaine added, "Not even Mother can order Gareth. He'll take her suggestions, but I've never heard her give him a command." Gawain replied, "I don't know why that surprises you. He's served 3 queens and been Captain General and the first Prince Regent for 2. Some think he's more of a symbol of Andor than the Queen is." Elaine remarked that their mother should just marry Gareth. It would solve many problems, and they know she wants to. Gawain shook his head and claimed that one of them must bend first. Their mother cannot, and Gareth will not. Rand felt forgotten, but had a sinking feeling as he realized who they may be. He croaked out the question, "Who is your mother?" Elaine's eyes widened, and in an ordinary tone Gawain told him, "Morgaze, by the grace of the light, Queen of Andor, defender of the realm, protector of the people, high seat of House Drakand." "The Queen?" Rand muttered in shock, and he felt numb as his head began to spin again. He thought about how badly he'd avoided calling attention. He scrambled to his feet and insisted he had to leave. He'll just climb back over the wall. Elaine asked if he really didn't know who they were, and where he was. Rand told her he doesn't like crowds, and only climbed the wall for a better view, then told the royal pair he was leaving. Gawain told him that leaving without giving his name was poor repayment for Elaine's care. Rand gave his name and even added he was from Emond's Field in the 2 Rivers, not knowing why he did it. Rand caught Gawain's momentary shock at this, before the prince said he knew the principal trades of the 2 Rivers are wool and tobacco from his training. He added that 2 Rivers folk are known for their stubbornness, only allowing themselves to be led by those they deem worthy. But if you push them, they will dig in hard. Elaine should choose her husband from there. She'll need a strong-willed man. "What's this?" a voice called from behind, startling all 3. He was a very handsome man, tall, slender, and confident, dark of hair and eyes, wearing clothes as fine as Gawain's. His hand was on his sword as he ordered the pair to move away from Rand. Elaine stepped in front of Rand to say, He is a loyal subject of our mother and a good queen's man. He is under my protection, Galad. Ran recalled hearing the name from Gil. He must be Galad Damodred, half-brother of Elaine and Gawain, son of the previous daughter heir to Grain and Tarangale Damodred. Although he'd heard scorn for the father, the son was well thought of both wearers of red and white. Galad told them that Rand was armed and didn't look reputable. She shouldn't base her trust in sword wrappings that can be changed. Elaine insisted that Rand was her guest, and Galad had no say over her actions. And when Galad tried to get Gawain to side against her, Elaine demanded that he leave. Galad bowed to her before heading down the path as Elaine said, "I hate him! He is vile and full of envy." Gawain told her, "There you go too far. Galad does not know the meaning of envy. Twice he has saved my life, and no one would know if he held his hand. If he had not, he would be your first prince of the sword in my place." Determinedly, Elaine told him, "Never! I would choose the lowest stable boy over Galad. I command you to be my first prince of the sword when I take the throne. The light's end that day is far off." Gawain laughed and bowed as he said, "As you command, my lady." Looking to Rand, Elaine said they needed to get him out of there quickly. Gawain explained that Galad always does the right thing, even when he shouldn't. In this case, finding a stranger in the garden means Galad will notify the palace guards. Rand said he'll go over the wall, chastising himself for not going unnoticed. Elaine said he should use the side gate instead, otherwise he'll undo her healing of his hands. The sounds of boots pounding had Gawain comment that they were out of time. Galad must have run once he was out of view. Elaine growled an oath, shocking Rand, and before he could take a few steps to the wall, red uniformed guards ran up, swords ready and arrows knocked. An officer with a gold knot called for the royal pair to move, but Elaine stepped forward, arms outstretched. She berated him. "You dare to bring steel into my presence, Talonvor? Gareth Bryn will have you muck in stables if you are lucky." The soldiers seemed to relax a little as Talonvor told them that Galad had reported a dirty peasant in the garden, presenting a danger, and they're here to arrest him. Elaine pointed out that Galad would not have described Rand that way, as he never lies. Rand is her guest and as such under her protection. Talonvor said that the standing order from the Queen was to detain all intruders, so he has to bring Rand in. Elaine seemed at a loss as Rand exchanged a look with Gawain, who whispered that it meant prison. Seeing Rand's white face, Gawain assured him it would be a few days at the most, and once questioned by Gareth Bryn, he'd be freed unharmed. Elaine demanded that Talonvor take her to the Queen at once. When he protested, she told him the only other choice was to put all three of them in a cell, which, unless he has orders that allow him to put hands on her, isn't going to happen. Gawain whispered to Rand that even if the Queen wasn't busy viewing Logain, the guards would never bring her daughter in under guard. Morghese has a temper. Another guard ran up to speak with Talonvor, and whatever was said made the officer smile. He announced that the Queen had ordered all three be brought before her, making Gawain wince, and Elaine swallowed heavily, yet kept her composure. The soldiers formed up around them and led them to the palace. Rand commented on how green the garden was despite the weather, and Gawain explained it was Elida's work. Elaine quietly instructed Rand to speak clearly when spoken to and keep silent otherwise. Follow her lead and all will be well. Bran wished for her confidence as they entered the palace halls. He noticed the liveried servants, cats, and total lack of rats. When asked, Gawain told him that Elida keeps them away from the palace. There were so many halls and corridors that Rand felt utterly lost before they reached their destination. Gawain muttered that at least they weren't brought to the Grand Hall. He's never heard his mother condemn anyone to the headsman from here. Talonvor made to take Rand's sword, which Elaine objected to as he was her guest, not a prisoner. The doorkeeper announced them and Elaine swept through the doors regally, motioning Rand to follow. She dropped into a courtesy and Gawain bowed, going to one knee, head bowed, right hand knuckles to the marble and left hand on his sword hilt. Rand emulated him, not knowing what else to do, earning a scowl from Talonvor, which made Rand angry at the assumption that he'd know what to do. The room was covered in tapestries, carvings, and a banner of the White Lion of Andor. Morghese was Elaine's beauty in full maturity, and her presence filled the room. If she'd been a widow back in Emond's Field, she'd have had a line of suitors regardless of how well she cooked. Rand chided himself for thinking about the Queen in terms of a village woman. Next to her stood a blocky man with 4 gold knots, grey-haired at the temples, yet still vital, and could only be the Captain General Gareth Bryn. Sat on a stool to the Queen's left was a handsome woman with an ageless face, who wore a red stole and a gold serpent ring. She didn't look up from her knitting. The sound of her needles clicking was the only sound in the hall whilst everyone waited to rise. Eventually Morghese declared they may rise, with a voice that expected obedience without fail. Elaine began to speak, but Morghese cut her off with a comment about her daughter climbing trees. It was in defiance of her orders to stay in her room and contrive a way to see Logain. Morghese chided Gawain for allowing his sister to push him around and get him into trouble. The duties of the first prince is not to just obey and to follow Elaine. He has to try and steer her away from disaster. She will ensure that his training is increased on the journey north. Elaine protested that he cannot stop her doing things if he's not with her, so he followed to keep an eye on her. Everyone else got to see Logain, and it wasn't fair that she was not allowed. A look couldn't hurt. Morghese told her that the daughter heir isn't everyone else. Logain is dangerous even under the guard of the Aes Sedai, and she wishes he was never brought to Caemlyn. The woman on the stool said he would be dealt with in Tar Valon. It was important that the people saw that the light had vanquished the dark, and that their queen had a part in that. Elaine said that she tries to obey her mother, which made Morghese laugh. She said that Elaine's spirit will serve her well when she's queen, but on the journey north she won't be allowed within 100 paces of Logain. The other woman declared that the sisters will train Elaine so hard she will want to run away, but she has it in her to be the greatest queen of Andor ever known. They will shape her, and she has the strength for it. Rand stared at the woman and realised she must be Elaida, and he was thankful he hadn't gone to her for help. She was so stern. Morghese asked Elaine why she claimed guest right for Rand, and her daughter described the order of events. Elaine asked how she can know her people if she never meets any of them except for servants and nobles. She's learnt more about the Two Rivers today than in all her studies. He came from so far away yet wears the red, and a loyal subject should not be punished. Morghese sighed as she told her daughter that the Two Rivers haven't seen a tax collector or the Queen's Guards in 6 generations. She doubts they even remember that they're part of Andor, and Rand's uncomfortable shrug betrayed the truth of her statement. Morghese gestured to him as she said, "You see, child?" Elaida stood before Rand and questioned his heritage. With his red hair and grey eyes, while Two Rivers folk rarely have his height, and are usually dark of hair, eye and skin. Rand told her that his mother was an outlander, who he takes after, while his father, Tamor IV, is of Two Rivers stock, and they're both farmers. She stared at him, then noticed his sword. "A shepherd from the Two Rivers with a heron-marked sword?" This brought a reaction from the court, and Gareth Bryn moved in front of Morghese. Even Gawain moved closer to Elaine. Morghese stated that he was too young to be heron-marked. He's only Gawain's age. But Gareth remarked that whilst he was too young, it sits on him as if it belongs. Rand explained that it was actually his father's sword. He gave it to him when he left. Rand was afraid of Elaida, so when she asked when he arrived in Caemlyn, he told her he'd arrived this morning and was staying at the Crown and Lion. It was an inn he recalled seeing, and he didn't want anyone knowing where he was. She made an accusation that it's little coincidence that Rand arrived the same day as Logain, which to her makes him dangerous. Elaine cut in to say that Rand had wanted to leave immediately, but she stopped him. Morghese asked Elaida if she had a foretelling, then commanded an answer. Elaida declared, "This I foretell, and swear unto the light that I can say no clearer. From this day Andor marches toward pain and division. The shadow has yet to darken to its blackest, and I cannot see if the light will come after. Where the world has wept one tear, it will weep thousands. Pain and division come to the world, and this man stands at the heart of it." Rand was stunned as he said, "I'm a shepherd from the Two Rivers." Morghese asked Gareth for advice, who told her that despite Elaida's words, he believes Rand's presence is an accident. To be safe, they should detain him until Elaine, Gawain and the procession are safely on their way to Tar Valon. Elaida looked sly and pleased as she stated she can learn more about Rand whilst he's locked up. Morghese considered, then spoke. "Suspicion is smothering Caemlyn, perhaps all of Andor. Women denounce their neighbours for dark friends. Men scrawl the Darksfang on the doors of people they've known for years. I will not become a part of it. When I took the throne, I swore to uphold justice for the high and the low. Rand al'Thor, do you swear unto the light that your father, a shepherd of the Two Rivers, gave you this heron-marked blade?" Rand forced moisture into his mouth as he said, "I do, my queen." Morghese continued, "And you climbed the garden wall simply to gain a look at the false dragon?" Honestly, he told her. "Yes, my queen." In a harder tone, she asked, "Do you mean harm to the throne of Andor, or to my daughter or my son?" Rand promised. "I mean no harm to anyone, my queen. To you and yours least of all." Morghese proclaimed, "I will give you justice then, Rand al'Thor. First, because I have the advantage in having heard Two Rivers speech when I was young. You have not the look, but you have the Two Rivers on your tongue. Second, no one with your hair and eyes would claim to be a Two Rivers shepherd unless it was true. That your father gave you a heron-marked blade is too preposterous to be a lie. Third, the voice that whispers to me that the best lie is often too ridiculous to be taken for a lie. That voice isn't proof. I give you your freedom, Randolph Thor. I suggest you have a care where you trespass in the future. If you are found in the palace grounds again, it will not go easily for you. Rand thanked her, feeling Elida's displeasure as she stared at his back. He wondered what would have happened if the Queen had agreed with the Aes Sedai. Talonvor was ordered to escort Rand from the palace grounds, and to his surprise, Elaine and Gawain joined him. The words of Elida's foretelling, and Morgaine's telling him how unlike Two Rivers folk he truly was, ran through his mind. He was so lost in thought he was surprised when the escort stopped before the gates to the palace grounds. Elaine told him, "It is custom to escort guests as far as the gates, but not watch them depart. It is the pleasure of the guest's company that should be remembered, not the sadness of parting." Rand replied, "Thank you, my lady, for everything. Custom in the Two Rivers is for a guest to bring a small gift. I'm afraid I have nothing, although apparently I did teach you something of the Two Rivers folk." Elaine shocked him by saying that if her mother had known that she found him handsome, then he would be locked in a cell. She bid him farewell, and he watched her walk away, trying to process having the daughter heir call him handsome. He turned to Gawain and asked why everyone was so sceptical of him being from the Two Rivers. Gawain nodded as if he'd been waiting for the question and said, "Wrap a shufur around your head and you would be the image of an Aielman. Odd, since Mother seems to think you sound like a Two Rivers man. I wish we could have come to know each other. Fare you well, Randolph Thor." Rand ducked through the sallyport and Talonvor slammed the gate behind him. The crowds were gone now. Litter scattered around was the only sign they'd ever been there. He realised he was standing exactly where Elida could find him, and by the time he reached the new city, he was sprinting.
Thanks for listening. Please like, share and subscribe and help get a new channel off the ground. Thank you.